Hello, my dear one, and welcome to Seth's Sleep Sanctuary. My name is Seth, and I'll be your gentle guide tonight. You've entered a quiet place, a resting place, where stories unfold like lullabies and ancient truths drift down like feathers in candlelight. Here we don't rush. Here we remember. Each night I'll sit beside you, voice low, steady, and warm, and I'll tell you stories from a very old book, but not like you've heard them before. These aren't just stories of miracles and mountains, of kings and prophets. They are stories of hearts, tender, wounded, brave. Stories that breathe with the quiet ache of love, the softness of forgiveness, and the stillness that leads to peace. We begin at the beginning, with Abraham, the one who listened to a voice in the stars. Then we follow his son Isaac, and then Jacob, and then Joseph, the dreamer who forgave. And now we come to Moses. But don't worry, we'll walk slowly. I'll hold your hand with every word, and if your eyelids grow heavy, that's all right. These stories were made for sleep, and every pause, every silence is part of the dream. So, curl up, take a deep breath in, and let it out. You're safe here, you're loved here, and the story is just beginning. This is Seth's Sleep Sanctuary, and I'm so glad you're here. In a quiet land of sun-kissed sands and sighing winds, where the mountains stood like sleeping giants and the stars unveiled their full brilliance in the hush of night, there lived a man named Abram. He was a gentle soul, thoughtful and kind, with eyes that carried a quiet fire and a voice that always seemed to fall like a lullaby, even when he was just asking for water or bidding good night. His home was nestled among olive trees and whispering tents, in a place called Ur, a city filled with many gods and many voices. But Abram, even then, felt something different in his heart. While others prayed to statues and lifted incense to the winds, Abram would lie on his back under the moon and feel the heartbeat of something deeper. He didn't know its name yet, but he felt it, like a warm hand on his shoulder in the dark. Something loving, something ancient, something that never slept. He had a wife named Sarai. She had eyes like polished clay, dark and soft, always searching the skies as if waiting for a miracle to fall. They loved each other deeply, though the ache of childlessness wrapped itself around their days like a soft shadow. They bore it with grace, with laughter that covered the silence, and with long walks at dusk where they said nothing but said everything just by holding hands. And then one evening, as the last light of the sun draped the sky in sleepy orange, Abram heard it. Not a sound, not a voice exactly, but a knowing, a presence, a whisper behind the stars. "Go," it said. "Go. Leave the familiar paths, the family shrines, the echoes of old names. Step out into a land I will show you." And with that, a promise bloomed in the air like jasmine in the night. "I will make you a father of nations," the whisper promised. "I will bless you. Through you, the world will be held close." Abram stood very still. His hand clutched a fold of his tunic, his heart beating slow and thick. And then he turned to Sarai. That night they didn't sleep. They stayed awake, fingers brushing softly, speaking in low tones by candlelight. It was not an easy decision. Ur had been their cradle, their roots, their memories. But the call, oh, the call, was too sweet, too real. So at dawn they rose. Camels groaned beneath loaded sacks, servants murmured sleepy greetings, and the wind rustled through the date palms like it was saying goodbye. Abram did not cry. He simply placed his hand over his heart as if to say, "I will carry you with me." They walked for many days. The dust became a part of them, settling in their sandals, in their hair, between the pages of their dreams. At night, Sarai would sit beside the fire and hum lullabies from her childhood. Abram would look at the stars, tracing invisible paths between them, trying to imagine the land that waited ahead. There were moments of doubt. Of course there were. Sometimes the road seemed endless and the sky too silent. But each time fear whispered, something stronger hummed beneath it. A peace that made no sense but wrapped around them like a cloak in the cold. Eventually, they reached a place called Canaan. It wasn't grand. There were no gates or trumpets, just rolling hills and olive trees, valleys that whispered to the breeze, and skies that felt impossibly wide. And there, under a tree that had likely seen many generations pass, Abram heard the voice again. "This is the land," it said gently. "This is where your story begins." Abram built an altar with trembling hands. He placed stones one by one, not out of duty, but out of love. Each stone was a word of gratitude, each whisper of wind, a hymn. Still, the years rolled by, and the promise of a child remained only that, a promise. Sarai smiled through her sadness, but Abram saw it in her eyes, like the sky waiting for rain that wouldn't come. One night, when the fire crackled low and the camp was quiet, Abram stepped outside the tent. He looked up at the stars again. This time, the voice came not just as comfort, but as presence. "Count them, if you can," it whispered. "That's how many will come from you." Tears welled in Abram's eyes. He held them back, blinking toward the heavens, heart swelling with something he could not name. Joy, maybe. Faith. A strange blend of longing and peace. "I believe," he said softly, not knowing that those two words would echo through eternity. But Sarai, oh, Sarai. Her faith was more like a folded letter she kept tucked close to her chest. Some nights she opened it and smiled. Other nights she tucked it away and turned from the stars. She grew tired. The ache of empty arms was too much. One day she pressed her servant Hagar's hand into Abram's and whispered a request that broke her own heart. Perhaps through her we will find the child. Abram did not want to hurt Sarai. He did not want another. But in that moment she looked so resolute, so tired and so sad that he nodded. And Hagar bore a son. His name was Ishmael. But peace didn't follow. The household grew 10, the air brittle with unspoken words. Sarai, once serene, now walked with furrowed brows. Hagar, once soft-spoken, now carried the quiet weight of pride and pain. Abram stood between them, heart heavy. Years passed. Abram aged, and Sarai's laughter became quieter. The promise seemed like an old song now, faint and fading. And then, one golden afternoon when the sky was brushed with the faintest shade of rose, 3 travelers approached their tent. Abram welcomed them with joy. He washed their feet with water cooled in clay jars, offered bread kneaded with care, and asked Sarai to prepare the best meal they could afford. They dined under the great oaks of Mamre, and the breeze seemed to pause to listen. Then one of the guests, with a smile like sunlight, turned to Abram and said gently, "Where is your wife?" "She is in the tent," Abram replied. And then came the words that felt like a chord struck in a dream. "I will return next year, and by then she will have a son." Sarai, listening behind the curtain, let out a short, disbelieving laugh. It wasn't mockery, it was disbelief wrapped in sorrow. But the guest only smiled deeper. "Why did she laugh?" he said kindly. "Is anything too wonderful for the one who made the stars?" That night, Abram and Sarai sat together in silence. No fire, no music, just the wind and the memory of the words. And in the stillness, a shift occurred, like a flower deciding to bloom again after many seasons of drought. Sarai's fingers found Abram's, and she leaned her head on his shoulder. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The moon rose slowly, silver and round, casting its light across the soft sand. The stars blinked in knowing silence, and something within both of them, old and tired as they were, began to stir again. Morning came slowly in the land of Canaan. The hills stretched their golden backs, the trees yawned with the breeze, and in Abram's camp a soft stillness lingered, as if the world itself was waiting for something tender to unfold. Sarai had grown quiet in recent days, but not from sadness. There was a warmth in her gaze now, as though something secret and sacred had begun to settle within her. Her fingers often rested over her belly, not in hope this time, but in quiet awe. She said little, but her silence glowed. It had happened just as the travelers promised. Within her, life stirred. At first, she dared not speak of it. She simply walked differently, slower, as if each step needed more thought. Abram watched her with soft wonder, his old heart catching in his chest each time he saw her cradle herself without realizing. His eyes, once weathered and filled with longing, now twinkled like starlight caught in dew. The nights were cooler then. The wind came in low hums, and Sarai would curl beneath blankets woven with the softest wool, humming old lullabies not meant for herself, but for the tiny heartbeat she now carried. She would whisper dreams into the fabric of her tent. "You'll laugh," she'd say. "You'll laugh louder than me. You'll run like the wind and chase sheep just to see them scatter. Your father will tell you stories under the stars. I'll braid your hair, if you're a girl, or hold your little face and teach you to pray, if you're a boy. But either way, my little miracle, I have waited a lifetime for you." And then, on a morning painted with the gentlest light, when the birds seemed to sing with more joy than usual, Sarai gave birth. Her cries broke the dawn. Her strength came like waves, long, patient, enduring. Abram stood outside the tent, hands clasped, head bowed. He whispered every name he knew for the divine, breathing prayers from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. And when the cry came, not Sarai's, but a new one, high and fresh and fierce, the entire camp felt it. Like rain after drought, like light through thick clouds. Abram's knees buckled softly, and tears traced the weathered grooves of his cheeks. He entered the tent slowly. There, in Sarai's arms, wrapped in linen soft as petals, lay their son. Their son. The room was hushed. Time itself seemed to pause. Sarai looked up, and in her eyes was a fire unlike any he'd ever seen. Not rage, not grief, but a joy so ancient it felt like it had waited thousands of years to be born. She laughed, a full, bubbling, silver-edged laugh, and the baby stirred at the sound as if recognizing it. "We will call him Isaac," she said, "because I laughed, and now all will laugh with me." And Abram became Abraham that day. The name was more than syllables. It was a turning, a becoming. He was no longer just a wanderer with a promise. He was now the promise fulfilled, a father, a beginning. Sarai, too, became Sarah. Her name now echoed like a wind chime across eternity. Mother of nations, heart of laughter, the one who waited long and loved fiercely. The camp rejoiced. Servants danced. Old women wept. Even the animals seemed to walk a little lighter, their hooves and paws moving with the music of miracle. At night, Abraham would take Isaac outside, swaddled close to his chest. The stars above them looked the same, but now they meant something deeper. "You see them, little one?" he'd whisper into Isaac's tiny ear. "Countless. That's what you are, a seed of stars, a living promise." Isaac would gurgle softly, hand gripping the fringe of Abraham's robe, and Abraham, once just a dreamer with dusty feet, now held eternity in his arms. But peace, while sweet, does not last unchanged forever. One evening, long after Isaac had begun to crawl and Sarah's hair had turned silver white like the edge of morning clouds, Abraham heard the voice again. The same whisper that had called him from Ur, the same presence that had promised stars and sand and blessings. Only this time, the words came heavier. "Take your son," it said, "your only son, Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah. Offer him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you." The world stopped. Abraham did not speak, not that night. He lay beside Sarah, eyes wide open, listening to her breathe, watching the moon trace the edges of their tent. Isaac, in another part of the camp, slept peacefully, his soft breathing as steady as the rustle of trees. And still, Abraham said nothing. He rose early before the sky had finished darkening. He saddled a donkey, took 2 servants, and woke his son. Isaac, still young, rubbed his eyes and smiled. "Where are we going, Father?" "To a place where we will worship." And they walked. 3 days passed, 3 nights under cold skies, 3 sunrises that grew heavier with each step. Isaac chattered, laughed, chased lizards along the trail. Abraham smiled faintly, heart aching with every sound. On the 3rd morning, Abraham saw the mountain. He turned to the servants. "Stay here," he said quietly. "We will go and return." And then, just he and Isaac continued. Isaac carried the wood. Abraham carried the fire and the knife. After a time, the boy turned to his father, his voice full of innocent curiosity. "Father," he said, "the fire and the wood are here, but where is the lamb for the offering?" Abraham stopped. The wind tugged at his robes, and his throat felt too tight to speak. But he did. "God will provide," he whispered. "God will provide, my son." The climb was slow, and when they reached the top, Abraham built an altar, just as he had done years ago. Stone by stone, steady hands, trembling heart. And then he turned to his son. He could not see clearly now, everything blurred. Isaac looked up, confused but trusted. He did not resist, not once. Abraham laid him gently on the altar. He bound him, his hands moving like a lullaby, soft, precise, reverent. Then he lifted the knife. Time stopped. The sky held its breath. The trees, the clouds, the wind. Everything paused. And just as the blade hovered above the boy, the voice cried out again. "Abraham!" He froze. "Do not harm the boy," the voice said, now shaking with love. "Now I know that your heart is mine." Abraham collapsed beside the altar, sobs racking his chest like waves in a storm. He cradled Isaac in his arms, whispering apologies, praises, prayers. And then, there, caught in a thicket nearby, was a ram, its horns tangled in the branches, a provision, a gift. Abraham wept again, this time with relief so deep it felt like rain after years of drought. They offered the ram together. Isaac held his father's hand as they watched the smoke rise, curling like a gentle prayer back to the sky. The walk home was quiet. Isaac held tightly to his father's robe. Abraham glanced often at his son, alive, walking beside him, the breath of promise continuing. When they reached the camp, Sarah ran to them. She had known something was wrong, though no word had reached her. She clutched Isaac, kissing his forehead again and again, tears soaking into his tunic. And that night, for the first time in many nights, Abraham slept deeply. Not because the journey was easy, but because he had seen again. Seen that love sometimes asks for more than we think we can give, and then gives us back more than we dreamed possible. Beautiful. Then let us continue this long and comforting journey together, without rush, without end, unless you ask it. Settle back now. Wrap yourself in the quiet warmth of the night, and let me, Seth from Seth's Sleep Sanctuary, carry your heart into the next chapter. Isaac has been spared, and a new season is beginning. A story of quiet love is gently blooming. The days passed slowly after that sacred mountain moment. Isaac no longer looked at the world with the wide wonder of a child. He was growing into something deeper now, still gentle but quieter. He had glimpsed something beyond understanding, and in the soft dusk light, as he helped his father tend the sheep or fix the tent poles, he moved like someone who had walked too close to mystery and returned blessed but changed. Sarah watched him from a distance, often with a hand pressed to her chest. Isaac was her only child, her miracle, her laughter made flesh. And though she never asked what happened on the mountain, a part of her knew. The way Abraham held Isaac more often, the way he stared at the horizon longer, the way Isaac sometimes paused, mid-laughter, as if hearing something only he could hear. Years passed. The seasons spun their soft music through the hills. Sarah grew slower, her steps measured like poetry spoken aloud. One morning she did not rise. The camp fell into silence. No birdsong, no music, just the hushed weeping of those who had known her grace. Abraham sat by her side through the night, fingers brushing her cooling palm, whispering all the stories they had lived. When he rose, he built a tomb, a quiet cave nestled in a field of trees, and laid her there gently, as one might tuck a child into sleep. Isaac wept by the tree near her resting place. He did not speak for many days, only sat with his back against the bark, fingers brushing the roots like he was still listening for her heartbeat. Abraham, in his old age, felt a new longing stir, not for himself, but for his son. Isaac, gentle and faithful, was alone now, and Abraham knew that the story, the promise, had not ended. It was only just beginning. One night, under a veil of stars, Abraham summoned his most trusted servant, Eliezer, a man who had walked with him through deserts and doubts, a man with the wisdom of many lifetimes and the hands of a healer. "Swear to me," Abraham said, his voice steady but full of feeling, "that you will not take a wife for Isaac from among the Canaanites. Go instead to my homeland, to my family, and bring him someone worthy, someone whose soul sings the same songs as his." Eliezer bowed, his heart thumping with the weight of the task. The next morning, as dawn brushed the sky in soft pinks and blues, he loaded 10 camels with gifts, bracelets of gold, jars of spices, bolts of the finest cloth. And then he set off across the endless sands, toward a land where the past still lived in memory. Days passed, nights rose, and finally, one evening, as the sun bowed low and the air turned cool, Eliezer reached a well just outside a small town. He was tired, dusty, and full of unspoken prayers. He knelt beside the well and breathed a quiet whisper into the twilight. Lord of my master Abraham, let it be that the young woman who comes to draw water, and to whom I say, please let me drink, and who answers, drink, and I'll water your camels also. Let her be the one. Let kindness lead me to her. And before the final syllable left his lips, she appeared. Her name was Rebecca. She moved like the wind, soft, sure, full of grace. Her jar rested lightly on her shoulder, her eyes like twilight reflected in a river. She looked at Eliezer without fear, only curiosity. He asked for water. She smiled, tilting her jar. Drink, she said gently, and I will draw water for your camels too, until they've had enough. Eliezer's breath caught, not because of the water, not even the words, but the way she said it, without hesitation, without calculation, just kindness flowing, like water from the well. As the camels drank, Eliezer stood in stillness, watching her hands move with practiced rhythm. She was strong but delicate, focused yet light-hearted. When she finished, he offered her a golden nose ring and 2 bracelets. "Whose daughter are you?" he asked, already knowing in his heart. She answered, "I am the daughter of Bethuel, son of Milcah, whom she bore to Nahor." Nahor, Abraham's brother. Eliezer's knees gave way. He dropped to the ground and worshipped, tears of relief running down his cheeks, blending with the dust of the journey. "Blessed be the Lord," he whispered, "who has not failed in his love and truth." Rebecca, unknowing of the fullness of the moment, ran home to tell her family. Her brother Laban came rushing out, his eyes wide with questions and curiosity. When Eliezer explained his mission, the gifts, the prayer, and the answer, they all understood. The next morning, Eliezer asked for Rebecca to return with him, but her family hesitated. "Let her stay a few more days," they said. 10 at least. Eliezer shook his head gently. "Do not delay. The Lord has made the way clear." So they called Rebecca. "Will you go with this man?" they asked. Rebecca looked out at the horizon, the unknown sands, the camels waiting, the promise of a life yet lived. And without hesitation, she said, "I will go." That night, she did not sleep much. She walked the gardens of her childhood home, fingers brushing the leaves, the stones, the wooden gate, saying goodbye without words. At dawn, she rode out with Eliezer, surrounded by quiet wind and the smell of myrrh and journey. For days they traveled. And in the distance, as the sun dipped low one evening, they approached the place where Isaac now walked alone in the fields, meditating, praying, remembering. He saw the camels first, then her. Rebecca, veiled in soft linen, alighted gracefully. Her eyes met his from across the distance, quiet, curious, deep. "Who is that man in the field?" she asked Eliezer. "That is my master," he said. She lowered her veil. Isaac came forward. He did not rush. He did not speak at first, but when they stood face to face, something ancient stirred between them. A recognition, a quiet promise whispered not by mouths but by hearts. Isaac took her hand. And from that moment, something wounded in him began to heal. He led her into his mother Sarah's tent, and there, in the soft glow of oil lamps and woven blankets, Rebecca became his wife. And he loved her, not with fire, not with noise, but with a love that steadies, that surrounds, that stays. And Isaac, still tender from loss, was comforted. The promise continued. The stars above twinkled in silent joy, and the breeze that moved through the hills carried the hush of peace. Now sleep, dear heart. Sleep like Rebekah on the first night in her new tent. Sleep like Isaac walking in the fields of memory, now softened by love. Let your breath slow. Let your body soften into stillness. You, too, are part of a promise. You, too, are led by kindness. And you, too, are deeply, eternally loved. Time, as it often does, moved slowly in the land of promise. The fields breathed in golden hush, the wells whispered memories, and Rebekah, beloved wife of Isaac, watched the skies with quiet wonder. She had waited many years, and the cradle beside her bed remained empty far too long. But Isaac, her husband, did not despair. Every evening he walked to the edge of the field where the sun kissed the earth goodbye and lifted his heart to the heavens. He did not shout. He did not plead. He simply asked, with love, with patience, with hope that moved gently like a reed in the breeze. And one soft morning, Rebekah knew. It began with a flutter, like the wings of a tiny bird brushing her ribs, then a turn, a tumble, a twist. She placed her hands upon her belly and whispered, "Are you there, little one?" But there was no reply, only a restless stirring that never quite ceased. The days went on, and her womb was never still. In the quiet of her tent, beneath the gentle oil lamp glow, she prayed. Her voice was soft, but full of ache. Why is this happening within me? And a presence, one she had felt once at a well far from here, answered, not with thunder, but with truth wrapped in stillness. 2 nations are in your womb. 2 people shall be born of you. One shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. Rebekah sat with these words as the wind moved through the flaps of her tent. She did not fully understand, but she treasured them, folded them like cloth and kept them near her heart. And then the day came. The sky that morning was veiled with clouds, and the air smelled of earth and new beginnings. The women gathered, singing songs older than memory, guiding her through the storm of birth. The first to come was red and wild, with hair thick as wool and cheeks bright with fierce life. They named him Esau. Then, grasping tightly onto his brother's heel, the second emerged. His eyes were sharp, quiet, seeking, knowing. Though smaller, he arrived with the calmness of someone who watches the world before deciding what to say. They named him Jacob. Twins born in a single breath, yet so unlike each other. Esau was the son of the hunt. He grew like the cedars, broad, bold, full of fire. His hands grew calloused from bows and beasts. The wilderness sang to him. His laughter echoed like thunder through the hills. Jacob, though. Jacob was different. He moved like the wind through wheat, soft, unseen, but always present. He stayed near the tents, learning, listening. He watched the stars and learned the names of herbs. His voice was low, his eyes deep pools of wonder. Isaac loved Esau. He was proud of his strength, the meat he brought, the wild fire in his spirit. But Rebekah, her heart leaned toward Jacob. Perhaps it was the prophecy. Perhaps it was the quiet way he moved. Or perhaps it was simply that she saw in him a mystery the world had yet to understand. Time passed, as it always does. One evening, Esau returned from the fields, his limbs heavy with hunger and exhaustion. The day had drained him, and the scent of stew, rich and red, bubbling in Jacob's pot, wrapped around him like a spell. "Let me eat," Esau said, voice rough. "I am faint with hunger." Jacob looked at him quietly, stirring the stew once, twice. "Sell me your birthright," he said softly. Esau frowned, sweat on his brow, his stomach twisting. "What good is a birthright to me if I die of hunger?" Jacob's gaze didn't waver. "Swear it to me." And Esau did. He ate the stew, licking the bowl clean, and wiped his mouth as if nothing had passed between them. But something had, something unseen. A thread had shifted. The birthright, meant for the firstborn, now rested with the one who walked gently among the tents. Years later, Isaac grew old. His eyes dimmed. His voice, though still full of kindness, trembled more. He knew his time was drawing near. And so, one morning, he called Esau to his bedside. "My son," he said, "I am here, Father. Go, hunt for me. Prepare my favorite meal. Then I will bless you before I die." Esau nodded and left at once, bow and quiver in hand. But Rebekah had heard. Her heart beat fast. The old prophecy returned to her, as fresh as when it was first spoken. "The older shall serve the younger." She called Jacob. "Do as I say," she whispered. "Go, take 2 goats. I will prepare your father's favorite dish. And you shall wear Esau's clothes. I will place skins on your arms and neck. You will go to him, and he will bless you." Jacob's breath caught. But what if he knows? What if he curses me? Rebekah touched his face gently. "Let that fall on me. Just do this, for the promise, for what was spoken." And so, with trembling hands, Jacob did as she asked. The food was made, the disguise prepared, and Jacob entered his father's tent. "Who is there?" Isaac asked, his voice low. "It is I," Jacob replied softly. "Esau, your son." Isaac leaned forward. "Come closer, that I may touch you." Jacob stepped into the candlelight. Isaac touched his arms, felt the skins, smelled the clothes. "The voice is Jacob's," he murmured, "but the hands are Esau's." He hesitated, then ate. And after, with hands pressed on Jacob's head, he spoke a blessing woven in destiny. "May God give you the dew of heaven and the richness of the earth. May nations serve you, and your brothers bow to you. Be Lord over your kin. Cursed be those who curse you. Blessed be those who bless you." Jacob received the blessing in silence, heart thundering beneath his ribs. He had barely left the tent when Esau returned. When Isaac realized the truth, he trembled violently. Esau cried out, the sound breaking the sky. "Is there no blessing left for me?" Isaac looked upon his older son with pain and said gently, "Your brother has taken it." And Esau wept. From that day, the bond between the brothers frayed. Esau's heart burned with grief and anger. He swore to himself that he would one day reclaim what was his. Rebekah, fearing what might come, called Jacob again. "Go," she whispered. "Flee to my brother Laban's house. Stay until Esau's fury fades, then return." And that night, Jacob packed quietly. He stood beneath the stars, alone now, with only the blessing in his heart and a staff in his hand. The road ahead was long, but something whispered that he was not alone, and he began to walk. As you rest now, feel the hush of this moment settle around you, the quiet between the steps of two brothers, the deep breath before a new beginning. Let your soul lie still like Jacob beneath the stars. Let your dreams open wide as his story will soon do. Because this journey, oh, it is far from over. But for tonight, you are safe. You are held. Winding. Dust clung to his sandals. His robe, once folded neatly in his mother's tent, now fluttered against his legs like a flag torn by the wind. He did not speak. The silence of his steps was his only companion. He thought of Esau, of the pain he had seen in his brother's eyes, of the trembling in his father's voice. He thought of his mother's last embrace, the way her fingers had lingered on his cheek. And he thought of the blessing, the strange, heavy blessing that now sat in his chest like a glowing stone. It was a blessing he had taken with trembling hands. The sun dipped low, and shadows stretched across the hills. Jacob looked for a place to rest and found a small patch of earth beneath a tall, silent tree. The sky above was already blushing with stars. He lay down, his head upon a smooth stone, and stared at the vastness above him. The wind stilled, the earth hushed, and sleep came gently. In that sleep, something extraordinary unfolded. A ladder appeared before him, reaching from the earth where he lay all the way up into the infinite heavens. It shimmered like light on water, glowing with a sacred stillness. And upon it, angels moved. Not with wings flapping wildly, but like thoughts, fluid, graceful, rising and falling in eternal rhythm. They ascended and descended in silence, messengers between heaven and earth. The ladder was not made of wood or gold. It was made of purpose, of prayer, of a thread that stitched the divine to the dust. And above it all, a voice. The same voice that had spoken to Abraham. The same that whispered to Rebekah. Now it spoke to Jacob. Tenderly yet firmly, like a father kneeling beside a fearful child. I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie, I will give it to you and your offspring. They shall be like the dust of the earth, spreading out to the west and east, to the north and south. And through you, all families of the earth shall be blessed. Jacob's heart opened, raw and wide. I am with you, the voice said, warm and deep. I will keep you wherever you go. I will bring you back to this land. I will never leave you. And then the light dimmed. The angels faded. The ladder melted into the morning sky. Jacob sat up, breath caught in his throat, hands trembling like leaves in the early wind. He looked around. The same tree, the same stone, the same quiet earth. But everything felt different. Charged. Alive. Surely, he whispered, the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. He took the stone he had used as a pillow and set it upright. He poured oil over it, letting it flow like liquid light down the rough surface. He called the place Bethel, House of God. And he made a vow, not one of fear, but of longing. If you will go with me, if you will keep me in this journey, give me bread to eat and clothes to wear, and bring me back in peace, then you will be my God, and I will give you a portion of all I gain. Then, with sleep still in his eyes and heaven still humming in his soul, Jacob rose and continued on. Many days passed. The landscape softened into green valleys and fields of swaying grass. Birds called sweetly from fig trees. The scent of water drifted on the breeze. And one afternoon, Jacob saw a well in the distance. 3 flocks of sheep lay beside it, quiet and waiting. A large stone covered the mouth of the well, and nearby, shepherds reclined under the shade, speaking in low tones. Jacob approached, brushing dust from his cloak. "Brothers," he called out, "where are you from?" "We are from Haran," one replied. Jacob's heart stirred. "Do you know Laban, son of Nahor?" "We do," they said. Jacob leaned in, his voice now lighter. "Is he well?" "He is. And look, his daughter Rachel is coming with the sheep." And Jacob turned. There she was, Rachel. She walked with steady grace, her hands guiding the flock, her veil flowing behind her like a soft flag of peace. The sun caught the curve of her brow, the strength in her step. She was not afraid. She was not small. She was beauty wrapped in courage. Jacob could not speak, but he moved. He stepped to the well, and with strength born not just of muscle but of wonder, he rolled away the heavy stone that even groups of shepherds waited to move together. He watered her flock himself, hands moving with reverence, eyes never leaving her face. And then he did something he had not expected. He wept. He kissed her cheek gently, as one kisses a long-lost truth. And he wept, the kind of tears that come when the heart finds its home before the body even understands why. "I am Jacob," he whispered, "son of Rebekah, your cousin." Rachel ran. She ran to her father's house, her feet barely touching the ground. And Laban, old, wide-eyed, and eager, welcomed Jacob with arms full of joy and questions. Jacob stayed. For 7 days he rested, and then he said to Laban, "Let me work for you. I will tend your flocks, and I ask for nothing but this: give me Rachel as my wife." Laban raised a brow. 7 years you must work." Jacob smiled. "For her," he said, "I would wait forever." And so he stayed. And the years passed like days. Each sunrise brought him closer to her. Each evening he watched her gather sheep or draw water, her laughter like harp strings on the air. He asked for no wages, only that she would one day stand beside him, her hand in his, her heart close enough to hear. And when the 7 years ended, he came to Laban and said, "The time is fulfilled. Let me be with her." A feast was prepared. Wine flowed. Candles flickered. The sky above sang with stars. But in the veil of night, Laban did a quiet thing. Instead of Rachel, he gave Jacob her older sister, Leah. When the morning came and light touched Jacob's face, he turned and saw, not Rachel, but Leah, silent and solemn in the dawn. His heart cracked. He went to Laban. "Why have you done this?" Laban shrugged softly. "It is not our custom to marry the younger before the firstborn, but fulfill Leah's week. Then you may also have Rachel, for another 7 years' labor." Jacob's heart ached, not from hatred, not even anger, just sorrow. But he agreed. He stayed. He worked. And soon Rachel too became his wife. And so the story opened wider. 1 man, 2 sisters, 1 loved, 1 longing, but both held by grace. Let your breath fall soft now. Let your thoughts wander gently through fields of sheep and sun-dappled wells. Jacob's journey has just begun. He has found love. He has wrestled disappointment. He walks between heaven's promise and earth's twists, and so do we. Sleep now. The caravan moved slowly across the burning sands, camels swaying, traders murmuring beneath the sun. Among their cargo was a boy, bound but not broken. Joseph, the dreamer, the favored son, sat in silence, his heart aching but still beating with wonder. He looked back once toward the hills of home, but they were gone, swallowed by distance, by betrayal, by fate. He did not cry. He simply whispered a prayer, soft and steady, like a breath given to the wind. "Stay with me, Lord. I do not know where I am going, but I will trust you." When they reached Egypt, its towering buildings and golden spires loomed like giants carved from the sun. The air smelled of spices and river water, and voices rang out in languages Joseph had never heard. He was sold again, this time to a man named Potiphar, a high officer in Pharaoh's court, a man of power, discipline, a man who commanded many. And so Joseph entered a new life, not as a son, not as a prince, but as a servant. Yet even there, the Lord was with him. The other servants noticed first. Joseph's hands brought blessing. His presence calmed chaos. Wherever he worked, whether in the gardens, the kitchens, or the tall, echoing halls, peace followed. Potiphar noticed, too. He saw Joseph's quiet eyes, his thoughtful words, his unwavering diligence, and he placed him in charge of his entire household. Everything he owned, he entrusted to the young Hebrew. And from that day on, the house of Potiphar bloomed. Grain overflowed. The livestock grew fat. The air in the home was clear and sweet, as if touched by something divine. Joseph grew stronger, older, wiser. His eyes remained steady, though pain sometimes flickered behind them. He had not forgotten the pit, or his brothers, or the dreams. But he waited. He served. And in time, Potiphar's wife noticed him too. She was beautiful and clever, and her eyes watched Joseph with growing interest. He was graceful, his strength wrapped in humility, his spirit firm. One day she approached him. Her words were soft, her smile was sharp. "Come lie with me," she whispered. Joseph stepped back. He did not shout. He did not curse. He simply answered with a voice steady like a river stone. "My master has trusted me with everything. Everything but you. How could I do this wicked thing and sin against God?" She tried again and again. Day after day, she came to him with honeyed words and hungry eyes. And day after day, he refused. Until one morning, when no other servants were near, she caught his robe in her hands. "Come to me," she said once more. Joseph pulled away, heart thudding. He fled. He ran from the house, leaving his garment behind in her grasp. The robe, his second one now, was left behind in accusation. Angered, humiliated, and burning with rejection, she called for the guards. She held the robe aloft and cried, "This Hebrew tried to harm me." When Potiphar returned and heard her tale, his face darkened. Whether he believed her or not, the choice was clear. He could not ignore such a claim. And so Joseph was thrown into prison, a dark place, a forgotten place, where songs went to die and dreams turned to silence. But the Lord was with him there too, even in prison, especially in prison. Joseph did not complain. He did not curse the heavens or retreat into bitterness. He simply served. He swept the floors. He comforted the weak. He spoke kindness into places where no kindness had lived before. And soon, The keeper of the prison saw what Potiphar had seen. He placed Joseph in charge of the others. The prisoners came to him with their grief, their aches, their memories, and he listened, and he lifted them. 2 men, servants of Pharaoh, were thrown into prison alongside him. One a cupbearer, the other a baker. One night, both of them dreamed. In the morning, their faces were full of confusion. Joseph noticed. "Why do you look troubled?" he asked gently. They looked up. "We have dreamed," said the cupbearer, "but there is no one to interpret." Joseph nodded slowly. "Interpretations belong to God," he said. "Tell me your dreams." And so they did. The cupbearer dreamed of a vine with 3 branches bursting with grapes. He pressed them into Pharaoh's cup and placed it in the king's hand. Joseph smiled softly. "In 3 days," he said, "you will be restored to your position. You will serve Pharaoh again." The man wept with joy. The baker then stepped forward, hopeful. He had dreamed of 3 baskets of bread on his head and birds eating from the top basket. Joseph's eyes lowered. "In 3 days," he said gently, "you will be lifted up, but not in restoration. You will not return." The days passed, and all unfolded as Joseph had said. The cupbearer was restored. The baker was taken. As the cupbearer prepared to leave, Joseph touched his arm. "When you are free," he whispered, "remember me. Speak of me to Pharaoh. I was stolen from my homeland. I have done no wrong." The man nodded. But when he returned to the court of Egypt, surrounded by golden plates and royal feasts, he forgot. And Joseph remained in the prison. 1 year, then another. Still he waited. Still he prayed. Still he dreamed. Though the walls were stone, his soul remained open. Though the days were dark, he believed the light would return. He had lost his robe again, but he had never lost his God. Sleep, dear soul. Let the hush of the prison be your quiet now. Not a punishment, but a pause. Not a sentence, but a sanctuary. For sometimes, even in the darkness, God is shaping the path forward. And Joseph's story is not over. Not yours either. Rest now. 2 long years passed. The prison walls remained the same, cold, still, patient. The dust did not move. The shadows slept in the corners like old cats. And Joseph. Joseph kept serving. He rose with the light, though it was dim through the narrow window. He tended to the other prisoners. He spoke kindly. He listened. He prayed. He never forgot who he was, nor who had been with him all this time. He still dreamed, not of escape, not of revenge, but of purpose, of peace, of the strange promise spoken long ago in the trembling light of dawn. Your brothers will bow, the stars will bend, your life is not lost. And far above the prison, in the palace of Pharaoh, something stirred. The king of Egypt could not sleep. He tossed beneath linen sheets and golden canopies, sweat beading on his brow. Twice in one night he dreamed, and the images burned themselves into his soul. In the first dream, he stood by the river. 7 cows emerged, fat, sleek, beautiful. They grazed in the reeds. But then, from the same river, came 7 more, ugly, thin, hollow-eyed, and the thin cows devoured the fat ones. Yet they remained just as lean, just as hungry. He woke, startled, breath caught, but soon drifted back. And then the second dream came. 7 heads of grain, plump, golden, dancing in the breeze. Then 7 others, shriveled, scorched by the east wind, and the withered heads consumed the full ones. Again he woke, and this time fear did not leave. He summoned his wise men, his magicians, his advisors. He told them the dreams, but no one could explain. The palace grew quiet. Tension thickened the air. Pharaoh's brow furrowed. Servants walked carefully. And then the cupbearer, once imprisoned, once comforted by a kind young man, remembered. He bowed low before Pharaoh. "I remember my faults today," he said gently. "When I was in prison, there was a young Hebrew servant. I dreamed there. He interpreted, and everything he said came true. Perhaps he can help you." Pharaoh's eyes lit with something close to hope. "Bring him," he said. And so Joseph, still dressed in the garments of a prisoner, was summoned. They washed him first, cut his hair, changed his clothes. The linen was white, clean, soft against skin that had only known dust and stone for years. And then he stood before the throne of Egypt. Pharaoh's voice was stern but curious. "I have heard you can interpret dreams." Joseph, with hands at his sides and eyes steady, answered softly, "I cannot, but God can, and he will give Pharaoh peace." Pharaoh told the dreams, every image, every detail. And Joseph listened, not just with ears, but with soul. When the king had finished, the silence between them hung like dew. And then Joseph spoke. "Pharaoh's dreams are one. God is showing you what is to come." He stepped closer, voice sure and low. "The 7 fat cows, the 7 healthy heads of grain, they are 7 years of abundance. There will be more than enough. But then 7 years of famine will follow, severe, deep, unlike anything Egypt has known. And the good years will be forgotten if nothing is done." He looked directly at the king now, not with arrogance, but with clarity. "Let Pharaoh appoint a wise man. Let him store a portion of the harvest each year, build granaries, guard the grain, prepare the land. So, when the famine comes, Egypt will not perish." The court held its breath. Pharaoh stared at Joseph in wonder. "Can we find anyone like this?" he asked aloud. "One in whom the Spirit of God lives?" He rose from his throne. "Since God has shown you this," he said, "there is no one as discerning as you." And in that moment, Joseph, once cast into a pit, Joseph, once chained by his brother's hatred, Joseph, once forgotten in prison, was lifted high. Pharaoh placed his signet ring on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in robes of fine linen. He placed a gold chain around his neck. He gave him a chariot, second only to Pharaoh himself, and as he rode through the streets of Egypt, voices called out, "Bow the knee, make way." He was 30 years old, and Egypt now rested in his hands. Joseph wept that night, not publicly. Alone, in the quiet of his new home, with silken pillows and polished floors, he knelt down and pressed his forehead to the cool stone. "Thank you," he whispered. "I never walked alone." 7 years of plenty came, just as he said. Grain poured in like waves. The fields danced. The barns groaned with fullness. And Joseph stored it all, carefully, wisely, tirelessly, He married. He had 2 sons. The first he named Manasseh, for God has made me forget all my hardship. The second he named Ephraim, for God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering. And then the famine came, not all at once, slowly. The rains stopped, the crops failed, the rivers shrank, and hunger spread like smoke. But in Egypt there was food, because of Joseph. And soon, from across deserts and dry lands, people came, nations and tribes, kings and commoners, and among them, Jacob's sons, the same brothers who once cast him down. They stood before him, dusty and hungry, not recognizing the governor of Egypt as the boy they had betrayed. But Joseph knew them, and his heart trembled, not with vengeance, but with memory and love. Now rest, gentle heart, for the past is meeting the present, and forgiveness is coming. Let the robe fall over your shoulders again. Let the dream rise again in your chest, for the dreamer has risen, and the world is being fed. Then hush now, dear soul. Let the breath of this sacred story carry you even deeper into peace. You are safe. The night is kind. I, Seth, your gentle narrator from Seth's Sleep Sanctuary, am still here beside you, and the heart of the story is about to open wide. Joseph is no longer a slave, no longer a prisoner, but his heart still waits for one thing: reunion, forgiveness, home. Settle your spirit. We are almost there. The famine touched all lands. Its hunger crawled across valleys and hills, over rivers and borders. In Canaan, the earth cracked beneath the feet of shepherds, and the wells breathed dry air. And in the tents of Jacob, father of many sons, there was sorrow once more. Jacob, old, wise, and weathered, watched his children grow thin with silence. He remembered Joseph, the beloved, the one lost, and still, every night, he whispered his name beneath the stars. "Go to Egypt," he said at last to his sons, "for I have heard there is grain there. Take silver. Buy what we need, so we may live and not die." 10 sons went, leaving behind Benjamin, the youngest, Joseph's full brother, the last thread of Rachel's love. Jacob could not bear to risk him, and so the 10 arrived in Egypt, weary, dusty, eyes low with reverence and fear. They bowed before the governor of the land. They did not know him, but he knew them. Joseph stood tall, clothed in silk and gold, with the wisdom of Egypt in his eyes. But within him, the child who once cried in a pit stirred softly. These were his brothers, the same who had thrown him away. His heart did not harden. It trembled. But he did not reveal himself. Not yet. "Where are you from?" he asked, voice distant. "From Canaan," they said, "to buy food." "You are spies," Joseph said, testing the waters of their souls. "No," they pleaded. "We are 12 brothers. The youngest is with our father. One is no more." Joseph flinched at the words. No more. How strange it was to be spoken of as dead when one still breathed. He imprisoned them for 3 days. Just 3. Long enough to feel what he had felt. Long enough to think. Then he released them. Except one. Simeon. He kept him in chains and said, "Return to your land. Bring your youngest brother to me. Prove your honesty. Then your brother will be freed." He gave them sacks of grain, and secretly he returned their silver in the mouths of the sacks. They left, confused and afraid. And when they reached Canaan, when Jacob saw that Simeon did not return, and heard they must now send Benjamin, his face crumpled like dry cloth. "You would take this son from me also?" he cried. "Joseph is gone. Simeon is gone. And now you would ask for Benjamin." Reuben spoke. "Take my sons," he said, "if I do not bring him back." But Jacob could not say yes. Not yet. And time passed. The food ran low again. Judah stood before his father one evening, his hands steady, his voice calm. "Send the boy with me," he said. "I will be a pledge for him. If I do not return with him, let the blame rest on me forever." Jacob's eyes, heavy with age and grief, searched his son's face, and slowly, painfully, he nodded. "May the God of mercy grant you favor." And so Benjamin went, back to Egypt, back to Joseph. And when Joseph saw his brother, his true brother, the one who had never harmed him, whose eyes still held the softness of childhood, he could not speak. He turned away, and he wept. Then he composed himself. He hosted a feast. He sat them in order, eldest to youngest, and the brothers marveled. He gave Benjamin a portion 5 times greater than the others. And still, he said nothing. The next morning, as they prepared to leave, he placed his own silver cup in Benjamin's sack. Quietly, a final test. They had betrayed one brother before. Would they protect this one? As they began their journey home, Joseph sent his steward after them. The cup was found. And the brothers returned, shocked, torn. Joseph stood before them once more. "What have you done?" he asked. "The one who holds the cup shall stay as my slave. The rest go in peace." And then Judah stepped forward. His voice broke. "Please," he said, "let me stay in his place. Let the boy return. If he does not, our father will die of grief. I promised to bring him back." And Joseph could bear it no longer. He sent everyone else out. And he wept. Not soft tears, but deep, shaking sobs that filled the chamber with echoes of a boy lost, a brother wounded, a heart breaking open. "I am Joseph," he said. His brothers stood frozen. "I am your brother," he said again, "the one you sold into Egypt. But do not be afraid, do not blame yourselves, for God sent me ahead to preserve life." They could not speak. He stepped toward Benjamin. He embraced him. They wept together, clinging like 2 pieces of a soul that had been torn too long. Then he turned to the others. He kissed them. He held them, and he forgave them. Forgiveness poured from him like rain upon dry earth. They spoke again, slowly at first, then freely, and the years fell away. Word reached Pharaoh, and Pharaoh rejoiced. He sent carts, gifts, and wagons. "Bring your father," he said. "Bring all that you have. You shall live in the best of my land." And so Jacob, the grieving father, received word from his sons. Joseph is alive. He is ruler over all Egypt. Jacob's heart stopped for a moment. He could not believe, until he saw the wagons. Then his spirit revived. He whispered, "It is enough. My son lives. I will go to him before I die." And so the journey began. from Canaan to Egypt. And as they neared the land, Joseph rode out to meet them. He saw his father approaching, leaning on his staff, eyes full of light and tears. Joseph fell on his neck, and he wept, long, soft wear, full of every year they had lost and every dream that had come true. "Now I can die," Jacob said, "for I have seen your face again." And Joseph was home. Rest, sweet one. Let this reunion hold you. Let the arms of Joseph around his father be the embrace you need tonight. You, too, will be found. You, too, will be restored. And love, like Joseph's, will not let you go. Sleep now. And I, Seth, from Seth's Sleep Sanctuary, will return with one final chapter, if you wish, to close the story gently as Jacob blesses his sons, and Joseph speaks a peace over the end of his journey. Jacob's tent was placed near the edge of Goshen, where the Nile wind moved like a sigh through the tall grasses, and the sun lingered a little longer each evening. The land was good, gentle. It welcomed him like a long-lost son. Joseph had prepared everything. His father, old and weathered like the olive trees back in Canaan, was finally resting again, surrounded by his children, his grandchildren, the laughter of little ones running through soft sand. For many days, Jacob simply sat. He sat under a fig tree, staff beside him, eyes closed, face lifted to the breeze. He would murmur sometimes, "Joseph, my Joseph," and smile. Joseph, though high in Pharaoh's court, returned each evening to sit at his father's side. The two would talk long into the dusk, not of thrones or harvests or politics, but of sheep, of Rachel, of stars, and of dreams long past. One night, Jacob sat straighter. "Joseph," he said softly, "bring your sons to me." Joseph's heart stirred. He rose and brought forward his two boys, Manasseh, the elder, calm and serious, and Ephraim, the younger, curious and bright-eyed. Jacob opened his arms to them. The boys knelt, and the old man embraced them, pulling them close, his hands trembling slightly but sure. "These are mine now," Jacob whispered, voice thick with love. "As Reuben and Simeon are mine, so shall these be." Joseph placed Manasseh at Jacob's right hand and Ephraim at his left, according to their birth. But Jacob crossed his arms. His right hand rested on Ephraim's head, his left on Manasseh's. Joseph gently reached to correct him. "Father, the firstborn is Manasseh." But Jacob shook his head slowly. "I know, my son, I know. Manasseh shall be great, but Ephraim shall be greater still. His descendants shall become a multitude of nations." He looked into Ephraim's eyes, and Ephraim did not blink. Then Jacob blessed them both, with words not just of prosperity, but of presence. "May the God before whom my fathers walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life to this day, the angel who has delivered me from all harm, may he bless these boys." And Joseph wept, not in sorrow, but in fullness. His sons were not only accepted, they were embraced into the ancient promise. After the blessing, Jacob leaned back, hands still resting on the boys' heads, and he smiled. "There is still more to say," he whispered. And in the days that followed, as word spread that Jacob's time was drawing near, all his sons gathered around his bed. 12 men, 12 stories, 12 destinies waiting to be spoken, Jacob sat upright, staff in hand, eyes glowing. He looked at Reuben, the firstborn. "You are my strength," he said, "but unstable as water, you shall not have preeminence." He turned to Simeon and Levi, fierce, bold, quick to anger. "May your violence be scattered," he said, "for you are mighty, but peace must find you." Then came Judah. Jacob paused and smiled. "Judah," he said, "your brothers shall praise you. The scepter shall not depart from your line. From you shall come a lion, and the nations shall bow." Joseph listened. His heart stirred again. A lion, a king. From Judah would come something royal. He continued on. Each son received a word, some sharp, some soft, some wrapped in mystery. To Zebulun, "You shall dwell by the sea." To Issachar, "You are a strong donkey, resting between burdens." To Dan, "You shall judge your people." To Naphtali, "A deer let loose, speaking beautiful words." And when he came to Joseph, Jacob's voice grew gentle and full. Joseph is a fruitful vine, by a well whose branches climb over the wall. Though archers shot at him, he remained strong. The arms of his hands were made strong by the God of Jacob, the shepherd, the rock of Israel. He paused, then whispered, "The blessings of your father have exceeded those of my ancestors." And Joseph bowed his head, not in pride, but in awe. Later that night, Jacob asked for silence. He called only Joseph. "Bury me," he said, "not in Egypt. Carry me home, to the cave of Machpelah. There lie Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Rebekah, and Leah. There, let me sleep." Joseph nodded. "I will do as you say." And Jacob laid down his head and breathed one last time, not in fear, but in peace. The family mourned. Joseph wept beside his father's still body, his tears soft, not of grief alone, but of love fulfilled. And Pharaoh allowed Joseph to leave, to bury his father with honor. A great procession moved through Egypt, chariots, horsemen, elders. They crossed the wilderness and returned to Canaan. And there, in the cave, beneath the branches of the ancient trees, Jacob was laid to rest. Joseph stood long at the grave, and the winds whispered, and the promise lived on. Now rest. Rest like Jacob beneath the trees. Rest like Ephraim under his grandfather's hands. Let the weight of the world fall away. The story will go on. It always does. Years passed after Joseph's death. The echo of his wisdom, the kindness in his eyes, the dreams that saved a kingdom, faded. Dust covered the memory of the slave who once became prince. The halls of Egypt whispered new names now. Kings came and went, each more distant from the boy who had once interpreted dreams and spared the world from famine. In the land of Goshen, the children of Israel remained. At first they were welcomed, honored even for Joseph's sake. But time is a river that washes away the footprints of gratitude. As generations passed, a new Pharaoh rose, one who knew not Joseph. This Pharaoh saw the Hebrew people, and he did not see allies. He saw a threat. They were many now, the children of Israel, like stars scattered across the night sky, too many to count. Their voices filled the marketplaces, their feet tilled the soil, their children laughed in the streets. Too many, too free, too strong. Pharaoh's heart, wrapped in gold but hollow inside, grew anxious. "They might rise against us," he whispered in the quiet of his chamber, staring into the flames. "They are not like us." And so, out of fear dressed as strategy, he shackled a people. He built cities on their backs. He ordered bricks pressed from their weary hands. He drained their strength like rivers bled dry. The children of Israel were made slaves, once welcomed, now whipped, once honored, now broken beneath burdens. Their songs changed. What was once praise became groans. What had been laughter became laments. And still they multiplied. Still they grew. Still they lived. Pharaoh's fear deepened, as fear often does when met with resilience. So he turned cruelty into decree. "All Hebrew baby boys," he said to the midwives, "must be killed. Cast them into the Nile." Silence followed his command. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of shattered hearts. The silence of lullabies that would never be sung. The silence of mothers holding empty blankets. Yet even in the valley of the cruelest decree, love found a way. In a humble home made of mud and hope, a woman gave birth to a son. The candlelight flickered softly on his face. His tiny breath danced in the still air. The mother, Jochebed, held him close. Her arms were not strong from luxury, but from love. Her eyes shimmered, not from joy alone, but from trembling fear. She looked at him, and she saw beauty, and promise, and danger. She named him Moses. For 3 months she hid him. Each day was a prayer. Each night a breath held too long. She rocked him in silence. She nursed him in shadows. She sang songs only the angels could hear, but the walls grew thin, and the soldiers walked closer. The cries of neighbors mourning lost sons grew louder. The time came when she could hide him no more. So she built something holy, a basket, not just woven reeds, but a cradle of faith. She lined it with cloth, sealed it with tar, and laced it with tears. She kissed her baby's forehead and carried him to the river, the same Nile that had swallowed others. She now trusted to cradle her son. She placed him gently among the reeds, hands trembling, heart breaking. The water whispered, the wind stood still, and with one final prayer, she let him go. The basket floated. It did not sink. It did not shatter. It drifted, carried by more than just the current. It was carried by hope, by divine intention. Miriam, the baby's older sister, followed. She walked quietly along the riverbank, eyes fixed on the tiny ark. Her heart beat loudly. Her breath came in pauses. The basket drifted, closer and closer, to Pharaoh's daughter. The princess had come to bathe, surrounded by her maids and the scent of sweet oils. She saw the curious shape nestled in the reeds. A maid waded in and brought it to her. And there it was, a baby, wrapped in linen, eyes like twilight, lips that quivered with a recent cry. And the princess, though royal and wrapped in silk, felt something stir within her, something ancient, something maternal. Her heart, untouched by cruelty, opened. "This is one of the Hebrew babies," she whispered. And yet, she did not call the guards. She did not turn away. She reached in. She lifted him. And in that sacred moment, Moses blinked. He did not cry, and in that silence, a bridge formed between the house of Pharaoh and the child of slaves. Then came Miriam, stepping from the shadows, brave as the river's edge. "Shall I fetch a nurse for him?" she asked. The princess nodded, and so Moses was returned to his mother's arms, to be loved, to be fed, to be held once more. But Jochebed knew. This joy was borrowed. She loved him with urgency. Each feeding, each lullaby, each kiss was counted like gold. And when the time came, she let him go, again. This time not to the river, but to the palace, to be raised not in bondage, but in bounty. Moses grew among columns of stone and halls of marble. He learned to read the stars, to speak the tongue of pharaohs, to ride horses bred for war. He wore robes stitched with silver, dined from golden plates, and slept on linen softer than cloud. But within him, the river still murmured. A voice not learned in books called to him, and he remembered. He remembered the faces of his people, creased with toil, eyes dim with sorrow. He remembered their songs, now muted by chains. And one day he saw it. A man, an Egyptian, striking a Hebrew slave. The sound of the blow shattered something within Moses, and in a breath the prince became a storm. He intervened. He struck. The Egyptian fell, lifeless. Moses buried the body in the sand, hands shaking. But truth has its own wind. Secrets scatter. The next day he saw two Hebrews fighting. "Why?" he asked. "Why do you strike each other?" One turned, voice bitter. "Who made you ruler and judge over us? Will you kill me too, like the Egyptian?" And Moses knew. His act was known, his place uncertain. Neither prince nor brother. He fled into the wilderness, into the silence of exile, into the ache of unknown paths, far from gold, far from thrones, far from safety, but closer, so much closer to his true purpose. The desert did not welcome him. It tested him. The sun seared his skin. The wind scraped his face. The ground cracked beneath his steps. But still he walked. And then, like a breath held too long, he found water. A well. Women gathered there, struggling to draw buckets under the weight of the day. Moses stepped forward. He helped. No crown, no guards, no throne, just hands, just water, just kindness. And there, by the well, his story turned. He would find shelter. He would find a wife. He would tend sheep and speak to stars. Years would pass again, until a bush, burning but not consumed, called out to him. But for now, let the night hold you. Let the Nile cradle your thoughts. Let your breath become steady like the basket on the water. You are not forgotten. You are not alone. You are not lost. You are simply drifting toward your calling. And somewhere in the hush of the reeds, in the silence between waves, the voice of God is waiting. Sleep now, beloved, and dream of rivers. Moses, once draped in silk and gold, now wore robes of simple cloth, weathered by sun and sand. His hands, once smooth from palace ease, grew rough, shaped by the staff he carried and the sheep he led. The silence of the wilderness became his companion. It did not shout or demand like the palace halls. It whispered. It healed. The winds spoke in ancient tones. The stars sang songs of eternity. And the mountains stood like watchmen, silent and wise. Each day was quiet labor. Each night a reflection. Moses was no longer the prince of Egypt, nor yet the prophet he was meant to become. He was something in between, a man unmade, to be remade. And then it happened. He was tending the flock as he had done many times before, guiding the sheep beyond the usual hills. The air was dry but gentle. The ground cracked beneath his feet, but the sky above held a strange stillness, like the world itself had paused. And there, upon a distant slope, something glowed. A bush. It burned, but it did not burn away. The flames danced, bright and fierce, yet the leaves remained green, unscorched. The branches did not curl. The trunk did not fall. It was fire, but it was holy. Moses stepped closer, his eyes wide, heart pacing like hooves across the desert floor. And then the voice came, from the fire, from beyond, from deep within the silence. Moses, Moses. He stopped. He could not move. Here I am, he whispered. Do not come closer, the voice said. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. And with trembling hands, he obeyed. The dust beneath his feet became sacred. The desert wind became breathless. The fire continued to burn, unearthly and eternal. I am the God of your father, the voice continued, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Moses covered his face. He was afraid to look upon the flame. Afraid, but not alone. And then came words he never expected to hear. I have seen the suffering of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cries. I know their pain. And I have come down to deliver them. Moses listened, his heart swelling with something he had buried long ago. Hope. But then, a silence, and the voice returned. And I will send you, Moses, to bring them out. The wind paused again. The fire crackled like thunder wrapped in whisper. Moses trembled. Me? He asked. Who am I, that I should go to Pharaoh, that I should bring the Israelites out of Egypt? He looked down at his hands, at his sandals lying on the holy ground, at the years carved into the lines of his face. I am not enough, his silence seemed to say. But the voice answered, not with rebuke, not with anger, with assurance. I will be with you. A simple promise, and yet greater than any army. Still, Moses felt unworthy. What if they do not believe me? What if I cannot speak well? What if I fail? And one by one, the voice met each fear, with signs, with power, with patience. What is that in your hand? God asked. A staff. Throw it down. And the staff became a serpent, slithering, alive. Moses stepped back. Pick it up. He reached forward, slowly, bravely, and it returned to wood. Another sign. His hand, placed into his cloak, came out leprous. Placed again. It was restored. Miracles, assurance. But Moses still hesitated. Please, send someone else, he said at last. And God, with mercy deeper than the sea, gave him his brother Aaron as a helper. 2 voices, 1 mission, 1 calling. So Moses rose, not as a prince, not as a warrior, but as a shepherd, carrying the flame of purpose in his chest. He returned to Egypt, not with armies, but with a message. Let my people go. He stood again in the halls he once knew, among pillars that once dwarfed his boyhood. Pharaoh, no longer a stranger, sat on the throne. Cold, proud, hardened. Moses spoke. The voice was steady. The fire, though unseen, burned within. Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, let my people go. Pharaoh laughed. He did not believe. But Moses did not come to be believed. He came to obey. And the journey of deliverance began. Plague after plague, sign after sign. The Nile turned to blood. Frogs filled the palace. Lice, flies, boils, darkness, each a whisper louder than the last, until at last freedom came, not quietly, not peacefully, but powerfully. The Israelites, once bent and beaten, now walked upright, led by Moses, their deliverer, not just out of Egypt, but toward a promise. Through the sea, split like curtains by the hand of heaven. Through the wilderness, where bread fell from above and water flowed from rocks. Through doubt, through rebellion, through mercy. And Moses, the baby once hidden among the reeds, the man who ran into the desert, the shepherd who spoke to fire, became the one who walked with God. But tonight, beloved, let your heart be still. Let the desert winds pass gently over you. Let the stars above remind you that even in the silence, your purpose is not forgotten. You, too, may be in the wilderness. You, too, may be in a season of waiting, of wandering. But know this. You are never truly lost. You are being shaped. You are being watched over. And even now, the flame burns softly, somewhere deep within. It waits, not to consume you, but to call you. So close your eyes. Let the reeds sway again. Let the basket drift gently in the current. You are loved. You are held. You are chosen. Sleep now, dear heart, and dream of stars, of rivers, of freedom waiting just beyond the shore. Walls of water that once stood like sentinels, split by the breath of God, had crashed down again. Egypt was no longer behind them. Not truly. The chains were gone. The whips had fallen silent. But freedom was unfamiliar. The Israelites stood on the other side of the sea, drenched in salt, in wind, in wonder, and silence. A deep, holy silence. Then came the singing. A song rose from the sand, from Miriam, Moses' sister, still brave, still bold. She lifted her voice and sang, "Sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and its rider he has thrown into the sea." The women took tambourines in their hands, brought from Egypt not for war, but for worship. They danced, they rejoiced, they wept, for joy now tasted strange on tongues long used to groaning. But the wilderness stood before them, Open, vast, and quiet. No maps, no guides, only clouds by day, and fire by night. The desert became their teacher. It stripped away the noise of Egypt. It peeled off the layers of survival. It asked questions no one dared to speak aloud. Who are you when there are no walls? What do you believe when the miracle fades? Whom do you follow when the road disappears? They walked and walked, and when the water ran out, thirst began to whisper. Tongues cracked. Children cried. The people turned to Moses, their voices sharp with fear. Why did you bring us here? They cried. Did you bring us out to die? Moses lifted his eyes, and God answered. Water flowed from a rock, cold, pure, unexpected, a river in a place where rivers do not live, and the people drank. Their thirst quieted. But hunger came next, and again the grumbling. What shall we eat? They asked. In Egypt, even in chains, there had been meat, onions, garlic, warm bread. But here, nothing. So God sent bread from heaven. Manna, delicate as dew, white like coriander, sweet like honey on the tongue. It came with the morning light and melted with the sun. They gathered it, each according to their need. Not too much, never too little. And every morning the wilderness whispered, Trust, trust that what you need will come. Just enough. No more, no less. But trust, like freedom, is hard to learn. The journey grew long. Some days the sun burned cruelly. Some nights the cold bit their bones. Still the pillar of cloud moved, and they followed. Still the fire lit the sky, and they walked beneath its glow. Moses walked among them, not as prince, not as stranger, but as shepherd again. This time not of sheep, but of souls. He listened to their questions. He bore their anger. He interceded for their doubt. Sometimes he lifted his hands to heaven until they trembled. Other times he fell to his knees and cried out alone. Lord, he said once, I cannot carry them all by myself. They are too heavy for me. And the Lord heard. Help came. 70 elders were chosen to share the burden. And still they walked. Then came the mountain, tall, rugged, cloaked in thunder, Mount Sinai. It rose like a flame frozen in stone. God called Moses to the summit. The people watched as he climbed into cloud and fire. Days passed. Nights. The mountain shook. Lightning danced. And Moses did not return. The people grew restless, afraid. Had he perished? Had they been abandoned? So they did what fear often does. They made something with their hands, a calf of gold, a god they could see, touch, name, and they bowed to it, and sang, and laughed. When Moses descended, his face burned with sorrow. In his hands were the tablets, stone, etched by God's own finger. But his heart broke, and he shattered them at the foot of the mountain. It was not just stone that broke that day. It was trust. It was innocence. It was the peace of deliverance. And yet, even then, God did not turn away. He asked Moses to climb again. And again Moses ascended, older now, wearier but willing. This time he carved the tablets himself. And God came down in cloud, passed before him, and spoke not with thunder, but with tenderness. The Lord, compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness. Moses bowed, and God gave the law again, not to bind the people, but to teach them how to live free, how to build something holy, not of bricks and straw, but of justice and mercy. A tabernacle rose in the wilderness, a tent, a dwelling place. Gold was offered, not for idols, but for presents. Skilled hands stitched curtains. Carpenters shaped altars, and the glory of the Lord came like fire and cloud to rest within it. God among them, not distant, not above, but with them, even in their stumbling, even in their forgetting, even in their longing for Egypt. Still, he stayed, and Moses changed. The man who once said, "I cannot speak," now spoke face to face with the divine. His face shone, literally glowed, so much so that he veiled it, because to look upon the reflection of God was too much for men to bear. He grew older, his beard whiter, his hands slower, but his spirit clearer than ever. He led them, year after year, through battles and blunders, through miracles and murmuring, always onward, always forward, until at last the promised land stood near. Green hills, running water, a land of milk and honey. But Moses would not enter, not because he was unloved, but because his journey was different. He had been the bridge, the shepherd of the wilderness, the voice in the silence. And so God brought him to a mountain, one final time, Mount Nebo. And from there Moses saw it, the land, the future, the home promised to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob. And then, in the quiet of that mountain, Moses breathed his last, not in fear, not in regret, but in peace, and God himself buried him. No one knows the place, because Moses was never meant to be enshrined. He was meant to be remembered in motion, in story, in journey, in hearts that still walk through wilderness places and wonder. Will God find me here? And the answer is always yes. So, now, beloved one, as you rest tonight, let this story rock you like the Nile once rocked a basket. Let the fire of the bush warm your dreams. Let the manna remind you what you need will come. And even when you are in a dry place, even when the night is long and the way unclear, know this: you are not alone. There is a cloud before you. There is a fire beside you. There is a shepherd, patient and kind, guiding you home. Sleep now, with stars above you, with whispers of hope all around you. And perhaps, somewhere in your dream, you'll walk beside Moses once more. You'll hear the reeds rustle. You'll feel the river beneath you. And you'll know. The journey is holy, even here, especially here. But so was Moses. His voice, once thundering with the commands of heaven, now echoed only in memory. His shadow no longer moved among the tents. The man who had faced Pharaoh, split seas, climbed fire-covered mountains, and stood between God and a grumbling people, was gone. The people mourned. For 30 days their camp was quiet. No singing, no dancing, only tears, only stories. Around the fires at night, children leaned close as elders whispered, "He spoke with God like a friend. He was not perfect, but he loved us deeply. He was the shepherd who never ran away." And yet, though their hearts were heavy, the journey was not done. The land still lay ahead, just beyond the Jordan River. The land of promise. The land sworn to Abraham beneath a star-strewn sky. And now, a new leader stepped forward. His name was Joshua, the son of Nun, a servant of Moses, a man who had waited long and walked faithfully. He was not loud, not tall, not wrapped in fire, but he was chosen. God came to him, not in thunder this time, but in stillness. "Moses, my servant, is dead," God said. "Now you must rise. Lead these people across the Jordan." And Joshua, though his heart beat fast, did not argue. He remembered the Red Sea. He remembered manna. He remembered the voice of Moses. "Be strong and courageous," it had said, "for the Lord goes before you." And so he rose, and so they followed. The Jordan River stood between them and the promise. It was swollen, deep with spring floods. Its current was fierce. Its banks were wide. But Joshua did not panic. He remembered. He told the priests to carry the Ark of the Covenant, the golden chest where God's presence dwelled, and to walk straight into the water. Strange, unthinkable, yet holy. And as the soles of their feet touched the edge, the waters paused. They rose into walls, silent, obedient, and the people crossed. Not a drop on their sandals, not a wave against their knees. The miracle returned, not in the same place, but in the same promise. They stepped onto the soil of Canaan, and for the first time in over 400 years, the descendants of Abraham stood free, on land not borrowed, not broken, but blessed. They built an altar there, 12 stones from the riverbed, one for each tribe. A memorial, a whisper for future generations. God made a way, even through the waters. But freedom brings its own battles. The land was not empty. There were cities, walled, mighty, proud. There were kings, fierce and armed. But Joshua did not falter. He lifted his eyes, and one evening saw a man standing with a sword drawn in the twilight. Joshua approached. "Are you for us or for our enemies?" he asked. The man replied, "Neither. I am the commander of the army of the Lord." And Joshua fell face down. He knew this was no ordinary warrior. This was divine. "Remove your sandals," the figure said, "for the ground where you stand is holy." And Joshua did, just like Moses had, because the mission may change hands, but the holiness remains. Jericho came next, a city sealed shut, its walls thick, its gates barred. But God gave instructions, strange ones. "March around the city," he said, "once each day for 6 days. On the 7th day, march 7 times. Then blow the trumpets, shout. No battering rams, no ladders, no swords, only footsteps, only faith. And so they marched. Each morning the city watched, confused, then mocking. But on the seventh day, the trumpets blew. The people shouted, and the walls, those ancient, impossible, towering walls, fell flat, not one stone upon another. And Jericho was theirs. Victory had come. But so had warning. God reminded them again, this land is a gift, not because of your strength, but because of my promise. So they moved slowly, each battle not just of swords, but of trust. When they trusted, they triumphed. When they turned, they stumbled. And still, God stayed, guiding, correcting, forgiving. As the years passed, the land was divided, each tribe given a place to build, to plant, to become. Wells were dug, vineyards grew, laughter returned to the valleys, and Joshua, old now, his beard white like frost, gathered the people one last time. He stood before them beneath an oak tree beside the altar. His voice was slow, steady, strong. You have seen what the Lord has done, he said. You have walked through waters. You have eaten bread from heaven. You have defeated armies stronger than yourselves. Then he looked at them, not with anger, but with love sharpened by time. But now, he said, choose. Choose whom you will serve. Will it be the gods of Egypt, the idols of this land, or will you serve the Lord? And the people answered, we will serve the Lord. And Joshua, content, stepped into his final rest. Another shepherd laid down in peace. And yet the story continued, because the story of Moses. But the people still wanted more, not just judges, not just voices that rose for a season and fell with age. They wanted what other nations had, a king, a crown, a throne, something they could point to and say, this is our strength. And though God warned them, though the prophet Samuel wept, they insisted. And so the time of judges ended, and the time of kings began. But that is a story for another night. Let the hills of Canaan hush now. Let the trumpets of Gideon quiet. Let the lion's roar fade into memory. Tonight, beneath your blanket, wrapped in stillness, know this: there is a time for every season, a time for wandering, a time for waiting, a time for weeping, a time for rising. And even when the story bends and twists and pauses, God still writes, still weaves, still calls ordinary souls to do holy things. Perhaps you too feel like Gideon, small, uncertain, afraid. Perhaps you feel like Samson, once strong, now broken. Perhaps you long, like Israel, for something steady, something seen. But rest assured, even now, your judge may be rising. Your victory may be whispering. Your next chapter may already be unfolding in the dark. So sleep now, gentle one. Sleep beneath the shadow of the Almighty. And if your heart feels weary tonight, let this truth cradle you. You do not need to be strong to be chosen. You only need to listen, to trust, to rest. Her name was Hannah. Each year she traveled to the tabernacle at Shiloh. Each year she brought offerings. Each year she brought prayers. But her arms remained empty. Her heart grew heavy with silence. Her womb, untouched by life, became a room of sorrow. And one year she could no longer hold her pain inside. She fell before the altar, and she poured her soul out, not in words, but in trembling. Her lips moved. No sound escaped. And the old priest Eli saw her and mistook her silent prayer for drunkenness. He rebuked her. But she, with grace and grief, said, "I am not drunk, my Lord. I am a woman deeply troubled. I was pouring out my soul before the Lord." Eli looked again and saw the truth, and he said, "Go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant your request." And in the quiet that followed, something changed. Hope stirred. Joy kindled. And soon, sooner than she dared believe, her body, once silent, bloomed with life. She gave birth to a son. She named him Samuel, which means God has heard. And when he was still a boy, barely weaned, barely walking, Hannah kept her promise. She brought him to the tabernacle, and she let him go. "He is the Lord's," she said. And the boy remained, raised not in his mother's arms, but in the shadow of the ark, beneath the soft flame of the lamp, among the worn robes of Eli. He slept near the holy things. He swept the altar stones. He learned the songs of Levi. But he was not just a servant of tradition. He was the beginning of something new. One night, the lamp had not yet gone out. The sanctuary was still. Eli lay sleeping, and Samuel closed his eyes. Then came a voice, "Samuel." He rose and ran to Eli. "Here I am. You called me." But Eli stirred and said, "I did not call. Go back to sleep." So Samuel lay down again. Again the voice came, "Samuel." Again he ran. "Here I am." Again the same answer. But a third time the voice called, and Eli understood. "The Lord is calling you," he said. "Next time say, 'Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening.'" And Samuel returned to bed, his heart beating like temple drums. And the voice came once more, "Samuel." And the boy answered, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." And the silence of the centuries broke. The voice of God returned to Israel, not in thunder, not through a burning bush, but through the soft yes of a boy. From that day on, the Lord was with Samuel, and not one word he spoke fell to the ground. Samuel grew, and so did the people's unrest. They no longer wanted judges. They no longer wanted prophets alone. They wanted a king, a crown, a banner like other nations. And though Samuel's heart ached, though he warned them of burdens and taxes and tyranny, still they insisted. And God said, "Listen to them. It is not you they reject, but me. Give them what they ask." So Samuel searched, and found a man named Saul, tall, strong, from the tribe of Benjamin. Saul did not seek power. He was looking for lost donkeys when Samuel found him. But God saw deeper. Samuel anointed Saul with oil, a sacred gesture, a private moment. The oil dripped down like destiny, and soon after, Saul stood before the people, clothed in royal calling. He became Israel's first king. At first, he walked humbly. He won battles. He defended the land. But power is a strange flame. It can warm, but it can also burn. Over time, Saul changed. He stopped listening, stopped waiting, stopped obeying. He offered sacrifices not his to give. He spared enemies God said to destroy. And Samuel, the prophet who loved him like a son, wept. But God said, "How long will you mourn for Saul? I have rejected him. Go, anoint another." Samuel trembled. "If Saul hears, he will kill me." But God sent him anyway, to Bethlehem, to a house of sons, the house of Jesse. And here the story shifts, not toward palaces, not toward warriors, but toward fields, toward music, toward a boy with sheep and songs and slings, David. But for tonight, let us pause here. Let us linger at the threshold of David's door. Let us sit beside Samuel as he holds the horn of oil once more. Let us breathe in the twilight that hangs between Saul's fall and David's rise. Because every ending carries a beginning. Every silence holds a whisper. Every heartbreak holds a calling. So now, beloved, sleep beneath the tabernacle's lamp. Sleep beside the ark of whispered answers. Sleep like Samuel, wrapped in the voice of God. And when the night calls your name, may your heart say, "Speak, Lord, for I am listening." You are not forgotten. You are not unseen. You, too, are part of this story. Chosen, called, held in holy hands. Let the hush of the sanctuary cover you. The oil dripped slowly from the horn in Samuel's hand. A single drop fell to the ground. Another shimmered at the edge of his finger before sliding across the brow of a boy. Ruddy, young, still smelling of sheep and hillside winds. David, the last of Jesse's sons, the forgotten one, the one not invited to the first feast, but the one God had seen long before the prophet arrived. Man looks at the outward appearance, the Lord had said to Samuel, but I look at the heart. And so, while his brothers watched in silence, David was anointed, not in royal robes, not in marble halls, but in the flickering light of home. His eyes were wide, his hands still rough from the staff. He did not understand it all, but heaven had chosen, and the oil remembered. From that moment, David returned to the fields. He did not rush to the throne. He did not fight for favor. He played his harp to the sheep and to the stars. And the songs, they came. Soft songs. Brave songs. Songs that would one day become psalms. The Lord was his shepherd, even before he was called to shepherd a people. Far away, in the courts of the troubled King Saul, a storm was stirring. The crown had not brought him peace. The applause had turned to pressure. The spirit had departed, and in its place, a deep unrest. Restlessness in his bones, sleeplessness in his nights. His servants saw it. "Let us find someone who can play," they said. "Music will soothe you." And someone mentioned a shepherd boy in Bethlehem, a boy who played with hands that knew both harp strings and lions' manes. And so David was brought to the palace, not as king, but as comfort. He came quietly. He played softly, and the music healed. The storm inside Saul would still for a time when David played. And David waited, not for reward, but for rhythm. He served, he listened, he watched, and though no one else knew it yet, he had been anointed for more. Then came a day of giants. The army of Israel stood frozen, each man silent, each sword unmoved. Across the valley stood a shadow, a man larger than memory, louder than fear. Goliath. He mocked, he challenged, he laughed. "Send a man," he bellowed. "Let him fight me." And no one moved. Not Saul, not the soldiers. Until David arrived, bringing bread and questions. He heard the challenge, and something inside him refused to stay small. "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine," he asked, "that he should defy the armies of the living God?" They laughed at him. They told him to go home. But David did not shrink. He remembered the lion, the bear, the private victories. And he said simply, "The Lord who delivered me before will do it again." He did not wear armor. He took no sword, just a sling, just 5 smooth stones, and with one step he ran toward the giant. He did not wait. He ran, and with one stone, just one, Goliath fell. The earth shook, and all of Israel shouted. But David returned to quiet, to waiting, to service, because destiny comes in chapters, and crowns must be carried before they are worn. Time passed. David served Saul, but Saul's heart grew dark with jealousy. He saw the favor on David. He heard the songs sung by the people. Saul has slain his thousands, David his tens of thousands. And bitterness grew. Saul tried to kill him, once with a spear, then again, and again. David fled. He wandered. He hid in caves. He lived among outlaws. He waited, not with pride, but with patience. He had 2 chances to kill Saul. Both times he chose mercy. He cut a piece of Saul's robe once, left his water jug behind another time. Each time he cried out, "I will not lift my hand against the Lord's anointed." Even when hunted, David remembered who he was. Even in caves, he sang, "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you are my refuge, my fortress, my strong tower." His kingdom began not with armies, but with a heart that refused to hate. Eventually, Saul fell. A battle, a sword, a silence, and David wept. He did not celebrate. He did not dance. He tore his robe. He sang a lament, "How the mighty have fallen." Because David loved deeply, even those who tried to destroy him. And then, finally, the crown came. Not with trumpets, not with fireworks, but with quiet, with reverence. And David became king, of Judah first, then of all Israel. He united tribes. He brought the ark back. He danced before the Lord, not as king, but as child. He wrote psalms. He led armies. He built a house of cedar and dreamed of building a temple. But God said, "Not you, your son will build it." And David said, "Amen." He did not push, he prepared. Because sometimes our role is not to finish, but to begin. David's life was not perfect. He made mistakes, grave ones. There was Bathsheba. There was Uriah. There was a moment when a king forgot his calling, and when the prophet Nathan came to him with a story of a stolen lamb. David wept. He repented. He did not blame. He wrote again, "Have mercy on me, O God. Create in me a clean heart. Restore to me the joy of your salvation." And God forgave him. David never lost the softness of heart, even when the world hardened around him, even when his own sons rebelled, even when the throne shook. He always returned to the shepherd. He always came back to the harp, back to the song, back to the still waters. And in his old age, when his hair had turned silver and his steps grew slow, David leaned on his staff again, not the one he carried in the fields, but the one he held in the soul. He looked back on a life of valleys and victories. He remembered the cave, the crown, the psalm, the silence. He called his son Solomon to him, and with a voice soft as dust, he said, "Be strong, keep the ways of the Lord, seek wisdom, seek justice, build what I could not." And then David slept, not in shame, not in fear, but in fullness. And he was gathered to his fathers. And now, dear listener, you have walked through so many chapters with me, from Joseph's dreams, to Moses' basket, to the wilderness, to Samuel's voice in the night, to David's harp in the cave. You have walked beside wanderers, sailed through miracles, faced giants, fled spears, wept in silence, and praised in dancing. And maybe, tonight, your own life feels like one of those chapters. Maybe you are waiting. Maybe you are wounded. Maybe you are wondering if the promise still holds. Let me tell you, it does. God still calls, still sings, still sends whispers into caves and kings into shepherd fields. He still speaks in the night. He still walks through wildernesses. He still calls the overlooked, the quiet, the young. And he still cradles the weary, like you. So now, breathe. Let your chest rise and fall like waves on Galilee. Let your thoughts become as still as David's harp beneath the stars. You do not need to climb mountains tonight. You only need to rest. The same God who parted seas, who softened Pharaoh's daughter, who whispered Samuel's name in the dark, who guided David's sling, is watching over you now. Your breath is a psalm. Your rest is worship. Sleep, child of promise. Sleep like the oil still rests on your brow. Sleep as if you are drifting in Moses' basket, watched by stars, cradled by purpose. And now, as you close your eyes, may I ask you something gentle? Have you found peace here with me? Have you felt the stories wrap around you like a blanket? If your soul feels calmer, if your spirit has softened, would you do one small thing? Would you subscribe to Seth's Sleep Sanctuary, so that, together, we can keep building a quiet place in this noisy world? a sacred space where story and silence dance, a place where you'll always be welcome, where every chapter ends, not in fear, but in rest. So, good night, my friend. May angels encamp around your dreams. May peace flow like rivers beside your pillow. And may you always remember, you are loved, you are led, and your story is far from over. Sleep now, sleep well, and I'll see you in the next whisper.